Welcome, everybody. Giving a minute or two here before we get started. Let everybody funnel their way in. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Let's call out some names I'm seeing in the participants. We got Todd, Tammy, Steve, Scott, Carrie. Thank you all for coming out. Spending your evening. I think we're spending at least 3 time zones tonight. Cool. All right. It is 6:02. We're going to get this kicked off and I'll do some introductions. So welcome, everybody. This is the Iconic IT in partnership with Integris, who have joined together, Iconic IT Whiskey and Cyber event. So the first part of this event will be all whiskey, and the second part will be all cyber, which maybe it will be more digestible later on in the evening here. With that, we're welcoming our special guest, Franck Mounier. I'm going to read Franck's bio real quick. Thank you, Franck. And everybody should have their whiskeys ready to go. So Franck is a spirit educator and consultant, well known for conducting amazing tasting experiences, teaching, and creative consultancy. All the sessions he entertains are very innovative and unique. Online tastings, master classes, whiskey and food pairing with refined meals. He teaches all levels from beginners to professionals through various certified in-person and online courses like the Whiskey Ambassador Program or the Whiskey Advanced course. He is always creating a warm atmosphere that leads attendees to learn, have fun, and enjoy the experience a great deal. So with that being said, I'd encourage everybody to turn on their camera. The chat and Q&A will be being monitored as Franck is doing his presentation. If a question comes up, I will ping the audience or I'll ping Franck to see if we can get a quick response. And at the same time, Franck is going to utilize the annotate features for engagement throughout the presentation. So at the top of your screen, when Franck gets into his presentation, in the center of the top, you will see a view options, annotate, and once you do that, you'll be able to engage with Franck's presentation. Franck, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Anthony. So the bar is high now. I must be innovative, making sure that there is a warm atmosphere and everything. So that will be my task. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the whiskey part of this nice session, afternoon altogether. So I'm Franck. I will be your guide. And when I say that I'm from New Jersey, there is something that might not exactly add up. I see some smiles. Actually, my accent, maybe I'm French, born and raised in Paris. I moved 20 years ago to New Jersey, but I kept my accent. I hope you can cope with that. Now, whiskey-wise, yes, I have a distillation diploma from London. I'm a whiskey tutor, ambassador tutor from Scotland. I'm involved in the whiskey and bourbon production here in the US. I'm also a judge to a whiskey contest, national and international contest. And I was fortunate in my life to travel quite a bit. I have visited to date, and it's growing by the week almost, more than 140 distilleries. And then I will share with you some of my moments on the distilleries tonight. But most importantly, I love what I do, and I hope you will feel the passion in my voice all along. So let me now share my screen, and you might recognize things that you are now becoming very familiar with, the whiskey, and I hope you didn't touch it. Open it very soon. The thing is, we will start to experience each of these samples blindly, and then, of course, after I'll tell you everything about. And then you had a nice chocolate box. You can enjoy them separately or with the whiskey. There is no specific pairing with these whiskeys and chocolate, but it will be nice together if you want. We have here in the middle the Aroma Wheel, the Whiskey Aroma Wheel. I'll come to that. It might help you on the tasting. And then as a word of caution, whatever setup you have between your glasses and your computer, please make sure that they don't play together, because when they do, the glasses always win and the computer doesn't like it at all. I don't know if it's part of cybersecurity or what, but maybe it's close. Anyway. All right, so I'll finish my intro with saying that I'm part of a company called Whiskey Gourmet, and we have only one goal in that company. That is just in 3 words. And the 3 words are, if the computer let me, we create happiness. So that's the only goal that we have. That's what I will try to do tonight together. So I'll try to make you enjoy the whiskey at a high extent, enjoy the atmosphere of the session, and keep and build a very nice memory of this moment together. And as Anthony mentioned it, we do a lot of stuff, whiskey, bourbon, Japanese, whiskey and food pairing, even cognac, gin, and wine, and many things like that. So now, enough of me. I'd like to hear from you, but you are a large group, but it's okay because my question is, what is your whiskey experience? And you have to assess yourself whether you are a complete beginner, so on the left-hand side, a whiskey aficionado on the right-hand side, or in the middle, or anywhere. How to do that? It's simple because Zoom offers that option, as Anthony alluded to it. So you have on the top of your screen a menu option, and if you click on option, you get annotate. And if you click on annotate, you will get a menu. And on the menu, you can either choose to text. So then you just click on the white rectangle, and then you click outside of it, and everybody can see your text. You can draw any free shapes, and you also have preset shapes, and you have also stamps in various shapes like an arrow, etc. So you can use all of that. And now, then I'd like you to tell me a bit where you feel you are on that board between complete beginner or the whiskey aficionado side. So please start to populate that screen. I hope you can.
Right, and it looks like we are running into, because we set this up as a webinar with panelists and guests, and it looks like the guests are not able to actually annotate. So what I would ask is that because of that, if we could throw it in the chat, that would be great. So if everybody could throw in the chat the Frank's question or the answer to Frank's question, that would be great.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. You will see I have all what it takes. You will see it's very even more simple. Let me share my screen again, and I'm prepared. I was prepared for that. Now you can see, you can just write a letter. Oh, sorry, where am I? I'm sorry. Yes, this is here. So you can just put a letter on the chat, and I will see where you feel you are. Okay. And someone said wannabe aficionados, CCCs. Okay, I saw some A's. All right. CDs. Okay, that's cool. Scotch aficionado. All right. Excellent. So BAC. All right. So we have various group. I would say a little bit, toward in the middle, but I have C and probably E participants. So that's excellent. So it helps me defining what level of detail I'm going to bring. Okay, D for David. And okay, it's populating nicely. All right. Okay, that's super cool. I'm just scanning all the chats here. Excellent. All right. Thank you very much. So maybe the aficionados, maybe I'll lean on you at some point, and the beginner, the complete beginners, the A or the novice. I hope that after this session, you will not answer A anymore. All right, so let me get going. And these are the 3 segments that we're going to look into together. So the 2 first being very short, the making of the whiskey, but it helps to the tasting. And then, of course, the tasting guidance. And ultimately, the big bulk of what we'll do together will be the tasting. So let's start by the first segment, the making of the whiskey. And I have a question for you, so you can still keep on the chat. Whiskey, whatever it is, bourbon, Japanese whiskey, Scotch whiskey, Irish, any whiskey in the world are made with only 3 types of ingredients. So I'm asking the group what kind of ingredients it is. So probably the C, D's, and E's are going to answer quickly. And so I hope I don't miss anything on the chat. Okay, water, yeast, and grade A. Yes, so we recognize immediately the people on the right-hand side of the board. Absolutely. That's the perfect answer. Could not say better myself. And the best proof is that's exactly what I'm going to show you. Cereal or grain, water, and yeast, that's all it takes to make whiskey in terms of ingredients. Now, if you think of cereal being wheat, water, and yeast, you can make bread with that. But you can also make whiskey with it. So let's see why and how the whiskey maker is making whiskey and not bread with the same ingredient. All right, of course, it will be a high level, but I hope you will enjoy anyway. So the first step is to extract the sugar of and the aromas of the grain. And for that, the steps are called the malting, the milling, the mashing. So more or less, the grain is mixed with water, dried, milled, re-exposed to hot water, and then all of that is going to extract from the grain the sugar, and then this is a sugary water that will go to the next step of the process, which is meant to convert that into alcohol and aromas. So this is a fermentation where the yeast plays a big role. The yeast will transform or convert the sugar into alcohol, and in the meantime will create aromas. So that's cool if you think about. So even for roses, the bourbon maker, they play with 5 different strains of yeast because each strain is giving a different profile to that fermentation. At the end of the fermentation, we get a beer or beer-like liquid, which is called the distiller's beer or the wash. It's 8% alcohol by volume, so it would be good for a beer, but not enough for a whiskey. This is why we need to concentrate the alcohol and keep the aromas. And this is where the distillation happens, typically 2 sequential steps of distillation. And the principle of distillation is are going to heat the bottom of this big pot still. It's called the pot still in copper. And all the wash has been poured at the bottom of it. And then they apply what is called the smart heat, meaning they will heat that wash at a higher point than the boiling point of alcohol, which is 178 Fahrenheit, but lower boiling point of water, which is 212. So by applying a heat in between, only the alcohol and the aromas are going to evaporate and pass through and be collected elsewhere. At the end of the second distillation, you get 70% of alcohol by volume, perfect, to go to the next step, which is improve the taste. This is a maturation. Whatever comes out of the distillation will be poured into a wooden cask, and then the color will appear and the taste will improve. And at the end, when the distiller decides that it's time to take the whiskey out of the barrel or the cask, then it's finishing the whiskey by adding some water to achieve the expected proof. And then the whiskey will be ready to hit the shelves of your preferred liquor store. So that's all. Of course, it's super simplified, but I hope it gives you a nice overview. Someone said peat in the chat. The peat is actually part of, not always, but when there is peat, it helps to dry the grain. And it happened that when you burn the peat, which is a decayed vegetable from thousands of years. So when you burn the peat, it creates heat, of course, that's what will dry the grain, but it creates also smoke that sticks to the grain. And even after all the process, there will still be a smoky flavor to the whiskey. So it's called the peated whiskey. And the Scotch whiskies, some Scotch whiskies are peated. All right. Yeah. Okay. So someone said that using ex-stout barrels to mature a whiskey creates something that is great, or maybe it's the opposite, I don't know. Yeah, you use whiskey barrels to mature a bit or let your beer rest in there. Yeah, absolutely. There are exchanges between brewers and whiskey makers on barrels, and they do exactly what you do. So excellent. All right, so guys, time to move on to the next segment, which is very practical, how to taste. Let me give you a few tips. First of all, anything that is involved in the process of making whiskey, being the type of grain, even the strain of grain, the minerality of the water, the temperature of the water, the yeast strain, the type of distillation, the shape of the pot still and more, and the type of cask and the environment, all of that will contribute to the final aroma profile of the whiskey in the bottle. And this has been summarized in a nice aroma wheel So this one is simplified. Some old Scotch whiskies can get up to 300 different aromas. So that one is simplified, but let's look into the inner circle. You will see why it's relevant to the nosing. So there are 8 families of aromas in whiskey, most typically. So fruity, floral, winey, and cereal are the first one. These families of aromas are composed of small aromas, small molecules of aromas. Think about like small balloons that will get up very quickly. And the get up is the evaporation, which means as soon as you pour the whiskey in your glass, these are the ones that are going to leave your glass, exit your glass the first. So these are the fruity, floral, winey, and cereal aromas that your nose can catch the first. And then conversely, the other ones, the fanny, sulfury, woody, and peaty, are heavy aromas like big balloons, slow motion. So it will take more time to show before you can nose them. This is why it's always good for a tasting to nose the whiskey at least 3 times to give enough chance to these heavy aromas to show and to be caught by your nose. All right, so now what is a protocol? So I know many tasting ways, but that one is pretty cool. So the first one is to cover the top of your glass. Why that? Because evaporation anywhere will happen. And then instead of leaving the glass, the aromas are going to accumulate at the top of the glass. And then as soon as you remove your palm and then you put your nose on the top, you will get the first highly concentrated level of aromas, which will be a nice first encounter with the whiskey. And then you repeat 2 times and you are ready to drink. Now, there is also a tip for tasting. It happened that the proof of any liquid, and the whiskey in our case, is hindering the sense of taste. So the tip is take a super small sip of whiskey, like a teaspoon. Why is that? Because by doing so, the saliva, which is in the mouth, is going to dilute the whiskey and decrease the proof, then enhance your ability to taste the whiskey. So by doing that, you will really feel much more the aromas. You can chew it, which will coat your palate and increase also your ability to taste. And repeating is not only nice, but can also help you catch a little bit more aromas. All right, so I think we're ready now to get to the real deal here, the tasting. So please take sample number 1, pour it in your glass, but don't drink it yet because there is something that is very important to do before we start drinking as a group, is to have a connecting moment and cheer together. So when you are ready, please open your video and turn on your video and then show the glass to all when you are ready. And then someone will say 3, 2, 1, and we all reply cheers. Okay, so let me stop sharing my screen and I'll ask Anthony, if you don't mind, when we see that the people are ready to start the countdown, and then all a group, please, unmute yourself and reply cheers, and that will be our connecting moment.
Absolutely. So I think because of our shortcomings on the webinar version of Zoom, we won't be able to see everybody and hear anybody, but I am going to ask Jay to unmute himself. So it'll be the 3 of us, maybe even Michelle's in the background there. Whoever's on the panelist side will be able to do this. So we can all do this together. And we know everybody else that's attending, I think we have over 50 folks right now, will be doing this with us. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, cheers.
Cheers. Okay. I think I heard cheers even from the muted people. All right, guys. Thank you so much, Anthony. So time now. Do whatever you want. You can try that experiment if you want to. You can nose, you can drink, nose, drink, alternate, whatever suits you. But what I like to see now, not to hear, is on the chat. That will be cool if you write some of the notes that you are getting on the nose or on the palate to inspire you. I'm bringing here up that aroma wheel. Don't get caught into our thinking that there is only there, only in that wheel that you will find things. Just describe whatever you feel. And okay, someone says, okay, that's very good. This is an emotional, this is an emotional descriptor, and that works very well. Okay, cheers from El Dorado in Kansas. Excellent. Thank you for sharing your location. All right, let's see. Okay, sweet, smell, and vanilla. That's excellent. Absolutely. Tastes like a blend. Yes, it is a blend. I'll explain that. That's very good. Fruity and orange. That's cool. I'm taking notes. Okay, hi, Charlotte, sitting in Towanda. Cool. So far, so good on the notes. So that's very good. Yes, it is a blend. Yes, there is vanilla. Yes, there is fruit. And yes, there is citrus like orange. Second sip was much better, so be careful. So, if it increases over time, stiff, okay. If you feel that the whiskey is a bit hard to you, on you, then you can add 3 to 5 drops of water and see what it does. So someone, in the meantime, someone said very fruity, a little bit of woody, and someone said peaty. So that's very good because it's super lightly peaty, but the person who said that, Justin, means you have a pretty good or low threshold on peatiness. I'll explain that, how the peaty is coming into play. All right, anyone else want to give it the last note? I know it's hard. We never do that. We never practice. We know always what we drink or we eat. So we never practice that. All right. So last question before I disclose what it is. Which country do you think this whiskey is coming from? Very trendy country for whiskey, very exotic. So it's pretty far. Let's see if someone can. Scotland, not exactly. Japan, yes, Japan it is. And this is a Japanese whiskey, and this is Suntory Toki. So let me move on. Yes. So Suntory from a big a Japanese group that is called now Beam Suntory. They have merged or acquired more or less Jim Beam. And they also, okay, someone says the water softens the taste. That's good. You don't need to add water, but just if you feel like, do it. And then that company has also acquired some distilleries in Scotland, but they have 3 distilleries in Japan: Yamazaki, Hakushu, and Chida. And this whiskey is a blend of a whiskey of each of these 3 Japanese distilleries. And the guy who does that, Shinji Fukuyo, let me present him to yourself. So Shinji Fukuyo, that's the guy. And I'm with him, and that was in London in 2018 at a very historical moment for the Japanese whiskey, because he created the whiskey that was crowned as the best single malt whiskey in the world. That was a first for a Japanese whiskey. And it was made in Hakushu, that was Hakushu 25 years old. The guy, Japanese, they don't like to show emotion, but you can see that he's trying to hide a smile, but he can not hide too much how much he is happy about. Let's look a little bit more granular here. The first distillery is Yamazaki Distillery. Super traditional, shiny pot still, as you can see. And then they only use as grain the barley, the malted barley. And then I'm showing here at the distillery the very first barrel that matured Japanese whiskey. It bears the number 001 from 1923. So it's a big piece of history here. The second distillery, also very traditional, nice pot still, and also they use exclusively the malted barley. And to the person who said, I feel some peat here, actually in Yamazaki, they are peating a little bit their whiskey. So the whiskey, one of the 3 whiskeys is lightly peated. It's even more diluted because there are 3 whiskeys, the 2 others are not peated. So it was very good that you could find that. So the last distilleries now has nothing to do with the 2 first. It looks like Mesa. Look at that. It's the Chida Distillery. So it is not Mesa. It is a distillery, and these are not rockets, but column stills to do the continuous distillation. You might have heard about column stills to distill whiskey. It happens typically not with malted barley, but with grain like corn. And it's very efficient to create alcohol it tends to remove a little bit some aromas. That's why they don't use that when it's boiling, which is bringing more aromas. So in terms of wood of cask, the first one is matured in ex-bourbon cask. So there is a piece of America here and also ex-sherry cask, sherry being a Spanish wine. And the two other distilleries are using exclusively ex-bourbon cask as well. So let's look at the notes. And by the way, these notes, I have sent them to Michelle and she will spread that to you later. So you don't need to take notes or whatever. So you can keep that later. So look at that. So soft orchard fruits, peaches, banana, raisins, honey. That's exactly what some of you said. Think about these spices, cinnamon and cloves. Okay, basil, honey again, and earthy notes. Earthy is a bit weird, but in that case, it gives some kick to the whole. On the palate, you can get the green apple, the citrus as nicely described. So could be orange, could be grapefruit as well. Green grapes, malt, which is breadiness a little bit, cinnamon again on the palate, bitter herbs, which kind of is not exactly the same, but a little bit in the same type of family that earthy notes. Toasted almonds, the vanilla, and the oak, as some of you has definitely picked on. And the finish, which is defined by whatever you still feel in your mouth after you have swallowed, tends to be short, but you get some fruits, some vanilla, even white pepper if you think about it, and ginger. Yeah, I can show you the bottle. I wish you show the bottle again. I did add a few drops of water. What do you mix in with if you don't want to drink it straight up? That's a tough question for me. I'm a straight guy on the whiskey. So look at that. I'm showing you again, but I have there is the picture, and again you will have the notes. I don't know what could go nicely with that. So I would assume something that goes a little bit along with bitter herbs, but that's all what I could see. So I'm sure some other will have more options here. So now I'd like to hear from you if by looking at these notes, you feel connected to it, meaning you see, oh, actually this note, I don't know, green apple, that's exactly what I felt, but I could not place that word. So is there anyone who wants to share that? You can unmute and then let us know what you feel.
Michelle, if you're doing this, or even Jay, because you're the only two that can unmute any of these notes or palettes or things that you guys noticed while doing it.
Okay, so I can look at the chat now, and then someone say, yeah, it was good. I caught the fruitiness. I couldn't isolate it. Okay, that's very good. Not my favorite. All right, that's also very good actually to describe it. So pleasant, a little like light. Okay, so that's good. And anyone else? Not yet. Okay. Oh yes, I did enjoy the finish. Okay, cool. Oak and white pepper. Okay, someone says yes. Now I see oak and white pepper. That would be, would it taste good warm? Actually, typically not. Conversely to sake, sometimes in winter, for example, you can try for yourself, but typically it is said that if you drink it at room temperature, even a bit lower, is better. I did it seem very light, not as heavy as expected. So that the beauty of the blend is made to please. All right, we have to get going. Okay, someone says delicious. All right, so that's cool. So you are little by little making or understanding your own taste. So let's move on. So I'll give you just very quickly two critical whiskey requirements. A whiskey must be at least 40% alcohol by volume or 80 proof. And then the barrel must be made of oak. So these are two critical requirements. All right, so ready for sample number 2, please pour it. If you have a second glass is better. If you have only one glass, so just read the first one. And please drink also some water. It's always good to drink water when there is alcohol intake. And whenever you are ready, so please describe it exactly the way you did. So the good thing when we are at the whiskey number 2 is that you can compare. So you can say, oh, I feel it's a bit more something or less something else. And yeah, describing the difference and the similarities. And in the meantime, if you have any question, yeah, you cannot unmute, but then you can write any question on the chat, of course. Smell like apple juice. Aha, that's good, actually. That's very good. Apple juice. And you will see how maybe some of you are sweet caramel. Absolutely. All that is absolutely correct. More aroma. Okay. Buttery, buttery. Wow, it's rare to have someone feel the butter. Absolutely. There is butter in there. At least not in there, but in the taste. Yes. Caramel. Absolutely. That's very good. That's excellent. Smooth, caramel, buttery. Smooth is a very good descriptor. I'll tell you why. Heat at the end. All right. Okay. Spice. Yes, there is spice also. The funny thing is nobody is adding spice or caramel. It's all coming through the process that we get all these aromas together. That's the magic of whiskey making. So far, so very good. Typically, I feel that a whole group is as good as one expert. Slight pepper. Okay, so that's good. So we have pepper also, no florals. Okay, pepper. What else? What do we have? Woody. Okay, yes, woody definitely. Woody is good. So let's see what we have there. Little woody, yeah, excellent. Anyone? Okay, so now I'm going to have a scent like it strong, like white wine. Okay, makes sense. So now, which country do you think this one is coming from? So it's not Japan, but it's not USA actually. Canadian? No, France not, but Ireland, yes. So let's look at that. This is the second most popular Irish whiskey, and this is Tullamore. So everybody or many people know Tullamore, but very few people know why it's called Dew. And it's just because of the initial of its maker, Daniel E. Williams. He was, so DEW, he was a distillery general manager when the distillery was the largest in the world. And then his grandson invented the blended Irish whiskey, and it can still be visited in the form of an Irish bar and a museum. So this one was highly rewarded, gold medal, silver medal in various contests. And let me describe quickly the way it's made. So it's a blend of three whiskeys. One is a grain whiskey, and then it is finished in ex-sherry wine. So the white wine, you remember, very good, and ex-bourbon cask. So the bottom one is malted barley, matured in the same type of cask, and the middle one is pot still, which is a combination of malted barley, the barley that is going through a very deep process, and unmalted barley, which is raw barley. The combination is called the pot still mix and gives the whiskey some smoothness. That's why the Irish whiskeys are smooth, creamy, soft, sweet, whatever. That is coming from there. So now let's look at, okay, now let's look at the notes. So fruit, green apple, the citrusy lemon, the dry fruit, the malt, which is more or less the bread, biscuit, English biscuit, and caramel toffee sweetness as nicely described. Fruity notes again on the palate, apple pear, honey toffee, vanilla, butter. Absolutely. Who would think about butter to describe a whiskey? But here it makes sense. Okay, so someone says, I'm having flashback from 2 weeks ago. That's great. That's also the power of whiskey, bringing back some nice memories. The wood is there as well, cinnamon, nutmeg, earthy notes as well, like the previous one. And then the finish tends to be a bit longer than the previous one. We still buttery, fruity malt, coffee, dried fruit, and some spices, as described by some of you. Excellent. So if anyone wants to give an emphasis on one or two notes that he or she felt very connected with after seeing these notes on the board. Not much. All right. That's okay. So let's get going and let's move on to our sample number 3. And please hydrate yourself in the meantime if you have a chance. And let me know what you think. So it will be a different country. So not Japan, not Ireland. And you let me know what you think. So I'm pulling up that whiskey aroma wheel. and I'm preparing the bottle to disclose it when I can. All right, let me know. And while you do that, it happened that our tasting library or olfaction library is built during our childhood. We all have a different childhood, then we all have a different scent or aroma library. And this is our benchmark. So when we are exposed to a whiskey, we're systematically going to compare the whiskey to our benchmark. And as we all have a different benchmark, we will all feel a bit differently with the same whiskey. Okay, someone said, you know what? I like that one much better. Okay, so I can tell you that I'm sure someone are having the opposite thoughts, and it's normal, again, just because we all have a different palate. Okay, someone says sulfury. Surprisingly, some sulfury sounds a bit bizarre, but Macallan, for example, they play on a lot of sulfur in their stuff. Herbal, okay, peaty and earthy. All right, so it's not peated as the first one was, because there is no peat in there, but there is a reason why you might feel it smoky. Wheaty, okay, so that's quite interesting. There is no wheat in there, but I see exactly what you mean. There is definitely cereal. Someone says vanilla and nutty. That's excellent. Oh, citric. That's very good too. What else? Let's see. Wow, oily. Okay, lingers around. Okay, so that's cool. I think we have a lot of good stuff now. Okay, what else lingers around? All right, so now which country do you think this whiskey is coming from? So that the usual suspect, number one, it's not Isla actually, but it's the same country. It's not France actually. I love the French whiskey, but it's actually a Scottish whiskey. Isla is it's an island in Scotland. So this is a Glenmorangie, a 10-year-old original, and that is coming from the Highlands. And then this distillery has a very unique feature. They have the tallest pot still in Scotland, 16 feet and 10 inches. I'm not very tall, but you can see the difference. And it has a lot to do with the taste, because if you remember, the molecule, the aromas, it's so tall that only the light aromas are going to pass through and the others won't pass through. So the heavy will be stuck and only the light aroma. So it's a light whiskey. And okay, someone says that one of my favorite high-end whiskeys, he is Bill Lumsden, the master distiller. He used to be the best master distiller of the year at some point. And again, high rewards here on these whiskey, master whiskeys or gold medal at various contests. And the way it is created is after the distillation, again, only light aromas are going to pass through. It's matured in ex-bourbon cask, first fill and second fill to get more wood and less wood, and ultimately that will become that Glenmorangie. And I'm here with Bill Lumsden. We meet on a regular basis. So let's look at the notes now. Of course, a lot of light aromas, floral, rose, carnation. If you think about fruity, I think some said fruity, citrus like lemon, also nectarine, banana, apples. The nuts, someone said nuttiness, that's very good. Vanilla as well. Tropical fruit, orchard fruits, the malt, the honey, the vanilla, the creamy, even the tiramisu. You can feel that and the toffee and still some buttery taste. It is not a peated whiskey, but as it has been matured in an ex-bourbon cask, the bourbon cask is charred in the inside. So that's maybe why you get some smoky feeling. And the finish is medium long with malted fruits. All right, don't ask for it on ice. Yes, exactly. Typically, you don't use ice because the cool temperature is hindering also your sense of taste. So for the sake of the time, we need to move forward. But thank you for all the comments. Let's move on sample number 4, and please hydrate yourself and let me know what you think about that one. So it's a different country, different make, different grain even. That's so let's me see if I see any comment on the chat. The ones smelled oily to me. All right. That's cool. And there is a good reason for that. Syrupy. Yes. What kind of syrup? it will help on the country. Syrup, sorry. What else? Oh my goodness, so good. Okay. Pepper and citrus maple syrup. Absolutely. That's exactly what it looks like. Woody, absolutely. There is a good reason for that, that it's from Canada. Yes, so I need to, yes. So let me disclose what it is. We have to go to move forward. So it's a Pie Creek 10-year-old and it's finished in rum cask. Let's look at what it is. So it's made at the Hiram Walker Distillery, the oldest in Canada, at the southernmost point. And this is where the most whiskey was smuggled during the Prohibition. And Al Capone was the biggest customer over there. So it's made out of corn and a little bit of rye. And this is the fancy pot still. And then it is matured for about 10 years in an ex-bourbon cask and then in a rum cask, finished for a few months. And here is Don Livermore, the master distiller, very skilled. And these are the notes. Of course, very sweet. Think about some fruits like plum, apricot, pear, and then you get the molasses. And of course, that's the maple syrup is there. Smooth brown sugar. The apple, someone I think mentioned apple, caramel, honey are there, a floraliness, vanilla, a little bit of spice, nutmeg and citrus, and then the finish medium short with pepper, rye spice. There is a little bit of rye that shows in the end, honey malt and drying. All right, I'd like that we linger a bit more, but we have to get going and experience our last whiskey, our last experience, our last sample. I have to speak, we are in America, so I have to speak about the ABCs of bourbon. A, made in America. Anywhere, any state can make bourbon. B, matured in oak barrels. For bourbon, they must be new, never to be reused for bourbon. And C is a corn, which must be the predominant cereal. Okay, so please hydrate yourself and let me know what you think about that next whiskey. It's a little bit higher in proof. The previous one was 43 ABV, so 86 proof. That one is 46.5, which means 93 ABV. And then if you feel that it's too proof or too high proof for you, just add 3 to 5 drops of water in there and see whether it helps. All right, so let me see. I need to update my, okay, felt the proof of on my nose. Okay, just remember, take a little sip, a small sip, teaspoon-like. Earthy smell, all right, see that, the reasoning, and maybe it reminds you some of the others whiskeys with woody wine. Okay, that's cool. Is that red wine or white wine? Much more wood forward. Yes, there is a nice reason why the wood is showing more. Husky, okay, that's a question. Sweet butterscotch smell, definitely. It's very sweet. The butterscotch is definitely showing there. Can't tell okay, if you think a little bit of drop of water can help, try that. Rubbing alcohol, hit the nose. Perfume, yes, exactly. It's almost a perfume whiskey, if I may. So the taste lingers, very woody. Yes, absolutely. And the taste lingers. So it's always cool when a whiskey lingers. All right, anything else? Love the woodiness, of course. Long finish, yes. What else here? Okay, I think we are good. So, easy question. Which country this one is coming from? That's really easy, I believe. Number 2 producing country in the world of whiskey after Scotland, US, of course. So let me disclose what it is. And this is, Ascot, okay. This is a few straight bourbon. So it's an amazing bourbon. So let me show you. And this is a few. And the statue that you see here is it's from Chicago, actually, almost close to the lake. And the statue here is the symbol of the rejuvenation of the city 20 years after it was burned to ashes. It won the city for the Columbian Exposition. In Chicago, it was in 1893. And that for 6 months, this exhibition gathered more than 7 million people. And here is a maker, Blatco. a multi-awarded person. I'm with him. This is in New York City, and he got just 2 bourbons award that very night. So, and let me show you a little bit the inside of the whiskey. So you get 70% of corn, 20% of rye, and 10% of malted barley. This is where the distillation happens. As you can see, nice pot still and column together. And these are the barrels where the whiskey is matured. So in terms of rewards, it's hard to put them all. I couldn't. But look at that, 95 points at the Ultimate Spirit Challenge. Many people would crave to get that, or tasting molds at the Ultimate Review of Spirit in 2014, or the best double medal of the best bourbon. Bourbon is the same as whiskey. Actually, whiskey is a big family, bourbon is a subfamily, and the ABC makes it. And this is a whole range. You can see the bourbon is here, but there are much more in that range. And these are the notes. And for the people who felt it was a floral, then you can see here the butterscotch, the juniper even. So that's for the people who felt the fragrancy of the whiskey. You get a lot of spices, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, caramel, of course, citrus, herbal notes that are a little bit on the close to what some people said, the rye spice, oak, and the citrus, general sweetness, nicely balanced wood cereal, and it's lingering, as some of you said, with caramel, butterscotch, and oak. So I'd love to speak a little bit more about that, but I have kind of a surprise and a special guest for you. And the special guest is Paul Blatco himself. So the master distiller, proud winner of many awards. And you can see him now on your screen. So let me sharing my screen. And Paul, is raising the hand. I don't know if you have ever been exposed to a whiskey maker who was distilling and who is so much awarded, but that is the opportunity to ask questions. Paul, for you to know, they cannot ask question verbally, but they can type on the chat. So I'll read that if you cannot, but maybe you can say a few words. Paul, first of all, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Integris and Franck. Very excited to be here. It sucks that we're all on Zoom. I know we'd all rather be in real life, but we've all been doing this for 2 years too long. But here we sit, really excited to be here and happy to be a part of the tasting.
Thank you, Paul. Some ask whether you need any IT assistance. People are happy to. Yeah, of course, in person is cool, but actually here we have gathered almost 60 people together, and we could not have done that in person.
Yep.
Now, I have a question. What makes your bourbon so unique and so highly awarded?
I just think we try to do our best to make great bourbon each and every day. That's what gets me excited when I get up in the morning is making whiskey. That's what I love to do. I think some people like doing IT. I don't. I like to make whiskey. It's a personal flaw, but here we sit. Yeah, I do have an awful job. I get my wife just always makes fun of me, like, oh, so you're going to go out working tonight, are you? Like, where are you going? To a fancy restaurant, drinking fancy drinks with fancy people and eating fancy food? Yeah, that's my job. That's what I do for a living. It's not my fault that I chose a good career, but yeah, what makes our whiskey different? We make it different than everybody else. That's the problem with whiskey is that all my competitors make really good stuff. I can't insult them because they make great stuff. So just tonight, you've had 5 great whiskeys. Hopefully some of you like number 5 the best. I do too, because frankly, I'm biased, but that Pike Creek at number 4, holy shit, that's good whiskey, man. That's awesome. Was it Glenmoe was
number 3, and we had
I love Glenmoe. Great stuff. So, what makes our stuff different? We make it differently because we have to. That's just the way it goes. And where stuff is all over. So I'm seeing a bunch of questions here. We're not hiring for tasters right now. It is a far less glamorous job than it might seem. Everybody thinks it's glamorous until you have to get up at 4 a.m. to go to the distillery and taste high strength whiskey at 6 a.m. It's a lot less glamorous than it seems. Taking taster applications out, IT assistants. Not really. Our IT are pretty minimal. Like we do email. So sorry, Death & Co. in Denver. I don't know if they have our stuff. They've had it in the past. I hope they do in Denver. Denver's a tough market for us, but we should be all over the place. If you are in Denver, do check out a place called the Family Jones. Really good friends of mine there and a great restaurant. A few aside, one of my favorites. I like a lot of great whiskeys. Four Roses is probably one of my favorites. Also in Denver, Leopold Brothers is awesome. Oh, I love, yeah. J Theaters is a great spot. Yeah, check it out. I've not been to a Plano, but I hear great stuff about it, and that's awesome to know. We love getting spread out. Yeah, we're now the company's now about 11 years old, and we've grown from just being sold here in Chicagoland to we're now the number one or number two selling in our category in the US. We're in 50 states, 36 countries, and continuing to grow. Yeah, and I know there's actual some meat to the meeting today too as well. Tammy's asking, you sold? Do you mean that I sell to Heaven Hill? Yeah, I sure as hell did sell to Heaven Hill. It was awesome. Highly recommended. Exits are good. Yeah. Any other questions? Or Frank, do you have a specific question?
Oh, actually, I think you said many things. Maybe I don't know. On the taste itself. So, what would you say the most important contributor to the taste of your whiskey, for example?
Oh, the most important thing I think the most important contributor to our taste is going to be the yeast that we use in fermentation. The bourbon, we use a beer yeast to ferment. And so I think that's where you're going to get a lot of that herbaceousness, a lot of those kind of coriander and cinnamon spices is coming from our yeast. And Tammy, no, actually, virtually none of it's about the money. It's about having the opportunity to continue to make great whiskey, try to make even more great whiskey. Yeah, money helps. This is my job. This is what I do for a living. And we all want more money. But no, for us, we want to make great whiskey, and having a partner with the size and the scale of Heaven Hill that is family owned, family operated, it's a no brainer for us. Where the name Few come from, when we started it, we didn't intend to make a whole. Heaven Hill is not. Heaven Hill is privately held. That said, we're located here in Evanston, Illinois, like Frank was saying. And Evanston is the birthplace of the entire Prohibition movement, which was effectively started by a woman named Frances Elizabeth Willard. And so a lot of people see a similarity with her initials in our name, although that is, of course, a complete and total coincidence.
All right, Anthony, Michelle, how are you doing with the time? Maybe it's time to move to the second segment of the whole session.
Absolutely. I want from all of Integris, Paul, thanks for coming and being the special guest of Frank tonight. Frank, thanks for putting this entire thing together. I love the ability to end with a Chicago reference here. And as our team members and our customers are traveling out and about, now we have somewhere on the map to go and head to, and say that we've been able to meet Paul virtually, which has been great. Paul, thank you for that.
Thank you, everybody. Be well and have a great evening.
Thank you. Yes, with you, of course.
Of course.
All right. Thank you, guys. Also, I'm going to sign off and enjoy your meeting.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all for doing the first part, the whiskey part. Hopefully you're all hydrated now. And now we can get into some cybersecurity and what's going on a little bit in the world today. So give me 1 second here to hide this chat that you guys have done a great job of participating in. And we're sleepy now. I knew we were going to get that, Jay. We got a big battle ahead of us here to keep this entertaining. I'm going to share my screen, and Jay and I are going to get after it. All right, here we go. So Integris, Iconic IT, and ConnectWise wanted to get together again. This is the second or third time Jay and I have done something like this. We wanted to change up the topic a little bit, address some of the stuff that's going on, and provide some further value on the cybersecurity side. So this session was called "What You Don't Know Will Hurt You: Cyber Warfare and the Impact on Your Business." So here's the agenda. We're going to do some intros. We're going to talk a little bit about the cyber war and the impact on your business that's going on right now, understanding cybersecurity risks and responsibilities, pending regulations that are out there in the marketplace, and then we will wrap it up. So real quick, who's talking to you today? We have Jay Ryerse. He is the VP of Global Security at ConnectWise. He holds the CISP designation. He was named the 21 and 22 CRN Channel Chief. He's trained over 10,000 people at IT Nation Certify, including myself. He's an international speaker on cybersecurity and the impact on SMBs, and he's also an author in his spare time. I'm Anthony DeGraw. I am your VP of Sales over at Integris. We are a nationwide MSP covering as far east as New Jersey and New York City and going as far west as Denver and Boulder, Colorado. We go as far north as the UP of Michigan, and we go as far south as Austin, Texas, and San Antonio. With that, let's get into it. So this first slide here, I'm going to touch on. I don't really like slides with a lot of words on them, so I'm not going to read the top part. That's a simple definition, but I am going to read the bottom part. Integris and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency just put out a lot of stuff on this specific topic, which is Russia and Ukraine, which is going on right now, as everybody is aware of, but also the threat out there that always existed. To be very frank, this threat is always out there. It's just specialized in nature right now based on the circumstances. So this is coming directly from our Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is a federal government organization, specifically stating Russia's invasion of Ukraine could impact organizations both within and beyond the region, to include malicious cyber activity against the U.S. homeland, including as a response to the unprecedented economic costs imposed on Russia by the U.S. and our allies and partners. Evolving intelligence indicates that the Russian government is exploring options for potential cyber attacks. Every organization, large and small, must be prepared to respond to disruptive cyber incidents. As the nation's cyber defense agency, CISA stands ready to help organizations prepare for, respond to, and mitigate the impact of cyber attacks. When cyber incidents are reported quickly, we can use this information to render assistance and as warning to prevent other organizations and entities from falling victim to a similar attack. I think this is really important. Right here in the link here, you can see these different resources. You can get there in multiple different ways. We will share all of these slides so you can click directly on these links to get to these resources. But I strongly recommend going to cisa.gov/shields up and looking at all the free resources that they have available to you. If that's a little complex in the way they lay that out, you can also check out the integrisit.com website at that specific link there with a better summarized version that our content team put together for your pleasure there. With that, we're going to get into a quick poll to keep the engagement going. So I'll ask our Michelle on our team to launch that poll. Which of the following is true? Russia disabled Ukraine's power grid during Christmas in 2015 and 16. Russia crippled Ukraine's supply chain in 2017. Russia crashed Ukraine's government website in January of 22, or all of the above. You'll see that poll right up on your screen. If you don't mind clicking a link, and we will get the results there. Awesome. I don't know, Michelle, if that pops up on your end, the results, and we can share that. Let me see what I can see here.
It does pop up as soon as I'm ready to end it. I think it looks like everybody has finished voting. It stopped. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll so we can see the results.
Awesome. I think I can scroll this over. Can you all see that, Jay? Can you see that on your side?
Awesome. Yes, I can.
All of the above. Wow. Everybody got the answer correct. Thank you for the 28 folks that did that. That is true. All 28 of you are correct. All of these things have happened to Ukraine via Russia consistently, obviously, since 2015. If you go do some deeper research, you'll find that this has been an ongoing battle back and forth with the two countries here. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jay and let him get into his slides here.
Anthony, thank you for having me again. And I'm not sure how you follow Paul and Frank. At what point did we think it was a good idea to drink before we talked about cybersecurity? No, I have to think that one through a little bit next time. But again, thank you all for being here. We're going to cover a few key areas relating to the agenda that Anthony laid out. First off, again, I don't know the whole audience. I don't know how many of you are technical, how many of you are executives, and what the overall mix of the environment is. So I'm going to cover both sides of it, make sure that I address the needs for everybody. So in cybersecurity, we talk about dwell time. And dwell time represents the time an attacker has been in your network from the time that they arrive to the time that they're eradicated, right? The concept is easy, but the reality of it is that, depending on who you ask, the average attacker is in a network somewhere around 150 to 160 days. Imagine the amount of damage they can cause and the amount of data that they can see in your network if they've been hanging out that long without being noticed. So we're going to talk about what that means here in a moment, but dwell time is a key part of every conversation, especially when you're talking to insurance companies, you're talking to cyber professionals. What can you do to increase visibility to see these attackers sooner? The sooner you can see them, and obviously the quicker you can reduce risk. So let's dive into some of the details. So ransomware is one that's the most fascinating. The dwell time on ransomware attacks. And ransomware, if you don't know what it is, when the threat actors actually crypt all of your files, so you can't read them or use them, and they don't give you the key to it. It's kind of locked on your door, and then you left your keys inside. Except the attackers have the keys, and they want to get paid to give it back. A year ago, the average dwell time for a ransomware attack was 70 days. Now we're down to 43. So they're getting in, they're moving faster, and then they're taking their attack plans seriously. And it's not certainly a good thing. If you don't know specifically where we spend time, it's all the major industries. And we'll cover a few here coming up on a slide. But we're actually going to talk about what it matters and where it actually fits in. But yeah, helping know where everybody else is from is good as well. So let's talk about what happens, Anthony, when we start talking about cyber attacks. And for some of you, it probably hasn't happened to you yet. And we'd like to all think that we live in this really nice neighborhood with clean streets and no traffic, and the kids can play out in the neighborhood until the streetlights come on. But that isn't the reality in cyber anymore. We need to pay more attention to it. The average downtime for ransomware is 21 days. The average cost of recovery for a small business is defined as typically less than 500 employees in this calculation. Average cost of recovery reached $1.8 million last year. There's all kinds of pending legislation coming our way as business owners. That's going to be very important for us to consider. And then we were on, Anthony, with Zach from Momentum not long ago, talking about cyber insurance policies. And we'll touch on some of the content there tonight just to understand what it means to get your renewals. We had one partner we worked with who came to us and said, hey, I've got a school system that needs to add SIEM solution, SIEM technology to their system before the end of April, or else their insurance policy is going up by 4x. Now, they didn't budget for that. They didn't know what that meant. And of course, they're scrambling, trying to figure out what SIEM is. I mean, we'll cover that here in a moment. But the reality is that these things are coming at us, faster than we possibly could believe. And of course, now we have to deal with cyber warfare. Anthony opened up with some information about the Ukraine and what's going on there. We don't even know what it means yet. And what I mean by that is that the threat actors are starting to take sides. So if you go on the next slide, we'll actually see a snapshot of some of the threat groups that are out there. If you want to click, Anthony.
Yeah, real quick, I wanted to touch on a few things too in terms of the hasn't happened to us yet. We brought this up in our last presentation, but for anybody that wasn't able to get that, I talk a lot about the reputation hit to a business, and it's very hard to quantify. And I don't think a lot of organizations think about that when your customers, I'm seeing insurance, I'm seeing investment, I'm seeing homeowners associations, healthcare organizations, construction equipment. We've worked in all of these industries and helped respond here, and nobody's considering the reputation hit. When this does happen to these organizations, it's a panic mode to get out. Help me get out as quickly as possible. Help me recover. Then the threat, then once they're in a state of, okay, this is going to trend the opposite way, now all of a sudden they're thinking about, what are my clients going to think about this? How are they going to respond? What are these consumers going to do? And the best way I've been able to articulate that, I don't know if it's the greatest way, but it has to do with the Equifax data breach that we all were probably a part of and aware of. And the reason I bring them up is because they were a $1 billion plus publicly traded company. And usually when you use that word of a publicly traded $1 billion company, you get, that's not me. And once again, hasn't happened to me, and it's probably only going to happen to them. But what I use that for is there was a very defined numerical data on what the reputation hit was for them. And that was 20% of their market cap. So when articulating that to either a small or a medium-sized business, even a large-sized business, you can utilize that same percentage. And I utilize that 20%. So if you're a $1 million business, can you take a $200,000 hit to your revenue stream? And you can escalate that all the way up. $5 million business with $1 million hit. And you start to think through, what does that reputation hit actually mean to me? So there's very tangible, I had to pay a ransom, or it cost me X dollars to get the team in here to get me back up and running. Also be thinking through, what is the reputation hit that I'm going to take and the clients I'm going to potentially lose?
Anthony, do you know what the average ransom charged for a ransomware attack is these days?
I do not.
So it's running at 10% of a company's revenue. So think
And
about it.
I'm assuming that's very strategic by those threat actors.
Yeah, I think it's enough to get paid and enough that the insurance companies will swallow it if they have insurance, but not so much that it's unrealistic. And more businesses are paying the ransom, which we'll talk about here and how important that's going to be going forward. But if you think about how long they're in your network, that dwell time, they have time to see your financials, find your P&L statements, understand who your business is and what it looks like. It's going to be challenging. And I saw a comment up here from Aaron. I'm looking up, I've got screen over the top of my camera. So he wants to be big enough to be relevant, but small enough to be safe. 64% of the attacks happen to businesses with less than 100 employees. So how small is too small? And there really isn't, because when they're attacking, they're not usually picking, okay, I want to go after Aaron's business today. They just send out their spam emails or whatever they're using to gain a foothold. And whoever falls victim that day, it's going fishing. They're casting a wide net to see who they can catch today. And it's no longer a size of how big you are, or a matter of how big you are or who you are. They're just going to find you. And that's what happens. So we were talking about the cyber warfare and some of the challenges we're going to face with this, and whether it's because of what's happening in Ukraine right now, or it's a future event. It's coming soon. We just don't know which is going to actually cause what will be the final straw. But the threat actors out there, on the left-hand side of this page, names of some of the threat actors, the groups that researchers follow. Wait, go ahead, hit forward again. One more, there you go. And you can see now how they've come out and publicly acknowledged which side of the conflict they want to be on. So some of them have taken the Russian side, some of them have taken Ukraine's side. And now there's literally cyber warfare going on between the groups. They're attacking each other. And if we build a timeline of kind of what transpired, our researchers, our SOC is over 160 people strong. We've got a full-time research team, a full-time incident response team working with businesses. But we saw back in late November, early December, a lot of reconnaissance work, where activity coming out of the Ukraine and out of Russia, and we think even the business out of Ukraine were Russian threat actors using the Ukraine networks and trying to figure out what they could break into on our side here in the States. Because they knew that once they went to war, at some point, we were going to inflict pain through financial means, which we've done. And now it's only a question of time before they actually turn their focus, not on each other, back at businesses here in the US. And the different types of attacks and things we're seeing really do vary. But at the end of the day, what we're looking for, you're okay there, you're good there, is visibility. We need to be able to see who's in our network, when they got there, what they did, and what kind of pain they're causing. It's easy for me to say that as a security person who wants to spend your budget. But the reality is that you have to have some visibility, and you have to take responsibility for protecting your data. As a business owner or a business leader, you own the data and you have the liability to protect that. It's not on Integris. It's not on your IT team there in the office. It's on you as the business leader or your executive team, your board of directors, to actually make sure that you're protecting the data that you're entrusted with, your clients, your employees' data, and who knows what else you have there as far as financial plans and business records going forward. When you think about it from that perspective, then you start to listen to what they're sending our way and watch they're sending our way for legislation, and it starts to make sense.
Quick point on that. Sorry, Jay, to interrupt. A quick point on that too, because we get a lot of conversations about either going to the cloud, or I use this ERP system, or I use this health medical record system, and I'm giving them the data. And Jay's point there, I want to further clarify, is that the law specifically states that your customers, your consumers are giving you their data and they're entrusting you with it. Where you send their data is your responsibility. and you need to protect that. So just because the ERP system or the financial system or the health medical record system got breached and that you didn't own that, you passed it on, it's still your responsibility at the end of the day. So remember that where the consumer gives the data, that's where the responsibility lays. You passing that data off to somewhere, it still lays with you. Now, you may be able to subrogate out against or come back later, but remember, you're still the first one in the eyes of the consumer, the customer, of where they entrusted their data to live.
You mentioned, Anthony, about healthcare, and I'll give you a quick story here. It wasn't that long ago that a doctor who I used to do business with, who was my doctor, my personal doctor, introduced me to another doctor in our town. Said, Jay, I need you to hear the story about what happened. And they're in trouble. They got hit by an attack and that their current providers can't help them. Can you do something? So we had gone in, this has been a few years now, but we went in, looked at what was going on. We got them back online. We were able to solve some issues that they didn't think that they could solve. Back up and running. It took about 4 days to get them back to operational, where they could see patients and actually file insurance and run their normal business. But a couple of weeks afterwards, when they were back up and things were back to normal, if there is such a thing, I sat down to debrief with the doctor and the practice managers and understanding what was the impact of what happened. And I asked the doctor, I said, so tell me, and I know what happened. I know the technical side of what happened, but when this happened, like what was going on in your business? And we were seeing some patients and he was trying to blow it off. I said, no, really, I need this story to be able to share with other businesses because they don't understand the impact, what it means to be down and have no access to your critical systems for days on end. And so we had a patient in every room because we were seeing patients actively. And we probably had 15, maybe 16, 17 patients in the waiting area waiting to come in and be seen next. Most of them had signed in and they were doing their charts and normal things. And all of a sudden, one of our physicians came out and said that they couldn't see their files. And all of a sudden, everybody had the same thing happen. They realized that there was a ransom attack because a message came up and said that they had been ransomed. And they didn't know what to do. Then they rebooted a few things, which they probably shouldn't have done. That's another story. They called their help desk and it just, everybody was in panic mode. And so they basically had to go in and tell all these patients that their computers are down. They have no access to their medical history, what medications they're on, who they are. Like they don't even know their names, who's there, because it was all electronic. And that as soon as the systems were back online, they would reach out and reschedule all their appointments and give them priority access to get in and meet their needs. And he said, they were mad. Obviously, people were very upset. And one of the patients that was leaving the waiting area pulled out her phone as I was standing there in front of our sign, and she snapped a picture. And before she got to her car downstairs, she posted XYZ doctor's office was just hit by a ransomware attack. I guess they don't care about my data. So you mentioned the reputational impact before. You can't bury that in conversations with your teams and understanding. It is imperative that you understand the impact of a cyber attack. And we'll talk about how to do it, how to address it, how to understand what it might be like. But just imagine trying to run your business for 5 to 9 days with no computers, no computers, and no tools. What would your business look like 3 or 4 days in? What would your employees be thinking about you from a business perspective? And that's why we're starting to see regulatory changes. When I first built this deck a few weeks ago, I was flying to an event and this popped up. I was actually reading the news. Wall Street Journal came up that the Senate had just passed a cyber package that would require firms to report the hacks. Matter of fact, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, as you mentioned before, it would have to be notified within 72 hours of attack and within 24 hours of a ransom payment. Now, I get it. That was just the Senate. But literally, this passed a week later. It went through the House and the president signed off on it. So this is now in play. And they're talking about 16 critical infrastructure environments. And a lot of people are like, I'm not in critical infrastructure. How do you define that? And that's where it gets really interesting. And I'll give you some examples of that because I've talked to a bunch of business owners who thought, yeah, we're not part of that. That's Colonial Pipeline. That's other places. It's not us. But this regulation didn't just show up this past month. If we look at this and then look back a little bit, back in May of last year when Colonial Pipeline was hit, Anthony, if you want to go ahead and click for me, there was an executive order on improving the nation's cybersecurity. And this came out literally within hours of the Colonial Pipeline announcement. It's a 34-page, professionally written, well-written document on what good security should look like for anybody that is in the government sector or is doing business with governments. And they talked about a few things I thought were fascinating. First off, that they didn't say, we know that businesses are not investing in security. What they said was, slow and inconsistent deployment of foundational cybersecurity tools and practices leaves an organization exposed to adversaries. We can no longer do this one piece at a time. We'll do a better firewall, we'll do a VPN, and then we'll do, no, you can't. There's a batch of things that they called out that you should have. I brought that list. I'm going to save you read the 34-page document in case you really want to read it. On the next slide, they talked about a few things. First off, an incident response plan. This is not even technology, Anthony. You work with partners, your clients all the time, helping them build their incident response plan. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's everybody comes, they don't know. I worked with a gentleman, I call him a center of influence. He spent 25 years in the Secret Service, and he ended his career the last 5 to 10 years representing New York City and then Newark, New Jersey's cybersecurity practice for the Secret Service. And this is the number one thing that he starts with. And it's a compliance, it's a incident response policy. It's when that hits, when that incident hits, what are you going to do about it? Who's involved? Outside of your computer or your Microsoft or whatever that you use to communicate with your team members, what other backups do you have? What's your business continuity plan? It all plays together, and they do real test tabletop exercises, right? Let's act as if this actually happens. And there's a whole plan from there, but very important to do and understand. Once again, it doesn't matter if you're 5 people or you're 100 people, this affects your business.
It does. And I do recommend if you do tabletop exercises, bring some whiskey because people are going to want to drink at that point and they realize just how unprepared they are, which is why you do it. Dating back, I was an Eagle Scout and it was about being prepared. I'm thinking about, okay, what could happen while I'm out there? So I got a first aid kit I'm hiking. I got this, I got a that. But incident response is the same thing. And building that plan and that policy are very important. But they did call out some technology as well. They called out multi-factor authentication. I know it's inconvenient. I know getting that code is a pain in the neck, but please sacrifice convenience for the sake of security. Multi-factor authentication has a major impact on deterring most criminals. Won't get them all, but it's going to get a lot of them out of the way. Next, they talk about an endpoint detection and response. You might hear the phrase now, what used to be antivirus is now EDR. And EDR is endpoint detection and response. MDR is just managed endpoint detection and response, right? We've got a team watching 24/7, see what's going on. Security incident event management, or SIEM or SIEM, depending on where you come from, are very important. This is your ability to capture the logs coming out of devices like your firewalls and routers, switches, and even laptops and other devices, and looking for a potential attack. Well, it didn't show up like they launched a ransomware attack, but hey, we just saw attempts to log into the CEO's president from a foreign country that we would not prefer to be in his laptop. But we know that the laptop is sitting there in his home office and he's not traveling or she's not traveling. How is that country trying to get in? So you want to catch those things as early as possible to cut the dwell time to the smallest number possible. That's where it all goes together. As Sean mentioned, zero trust. Zero trust is very important. Right now, for most businesses, zero trust is a philosophy. The ability to actually enact and implement zero trust is fantastic. But if you can't get these first 5 right, you won't get to zero trust anytime soon. If you don't know where to start here, and if you're really not sure where to start, before you even spend money on any of these other items, do an assessment. Understand what's actually going on in your environment. Where is your risk? Where is your data? How does it move? Who has access to it? Before you decide what to even spend money on from a technology perspective. That assessment will save you a ton of time.
I'm going to call out our industry here too, and I'll give some specific examples. I'm really good at calling out the IT and cybersecurity industry because I'm transparent, and I'll use specific examples. So there's been multiple times where a local nonprofit organization, could be a sizable nonprofit organization that hasn't invested much into IT or cybersecurity because they're investing in their programs and serving their consumers of what they're doing. And there's been multiple times where I specifically have gotten calls because I sit on the board of the nonprofit or I'm affiliated with somebody that does, and I'm the first person they recommend, or Integris is recommended to at least have a conversation. And they have a proposal on their desk for, let's call it a $20,000 penetration test, which is a type of test that you can go through and it produces great results. However, it's not the first place to start if you ask some very good, easy questions. And Jay is laying this out here, but there's our CISO, our virtual chief information security officer, asks these questions in a very structured format when initially getting on a call with somebody. And it's very simple. It's about 7 questions. Do you have this? Yes or no? And then you go a little bit deeper and deeper. We've recently had multiple of these conversations where the answer to each question has been no. And therefore, the end result should not be a in-depth penetration test that is really testing the strengths and security of your systems that are already in place. The answer should be, you're not even close to ready for that. You need to start at ground zero, something like this, and really define where you're currently at and spend the money and the investment and the time in getting just to a really good base level before going very deep on this. So I would tell you in response to that, that when going down this route, you should be having a conversation with at least a few folks to make sure that you're being properly handled and pointed in the right direction.
Ironically, most of a cybersecurity assessment is a risk conversation.
Yeah.
Understanding where the risk is to your business. It's not technical. There's time for technical. You're going to need that, but that's not where you should be starting. We'll talk about security programs here in just a moment, but let's finish up on the regulations, because I mentioned to you guys before that this is coming in. It's now been signed. They believe that it will take Homeland Security, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, they gave them up to 2 years to enact this. They're already actively enacting it. Like, they've already got stuff on their website. They were planning for this beforehand. And those 16 industry sectors, I can read them off to you. So you've got chemical, you've got commercial facilities, including places where large crowds like hotels, malls, and entertainment fit in. Okay, so I had a person who runs a hotel. I don't have to meet this. Yeah, you're probably going to have to. Communications, manufacturing, dams, defense industrial base. I would expect that one. I'm glad that they're involved. Emergency services, so 911, police, fire, and ambulance. Energy services, financial services, food and agriculture. Agriculture is a fascinating one, Anthony. We actually have an office in Harlan, Iowa, and the team there farms plus helps secure our partners. And while I was visiting them a couple of years ago, I went for a ride in one of their big rigs. I'd never been in one of those before. Like the huge tractor.
Yeah.
I get in the tractor and it's all computers. I'm stumped. Okay, tell me more. Tell me why. Tell me what's going on. He said, well, the 4 quarters of our property plus a post in the middle of all of our acreage, we set up a wireless mesh network. And he had a Verizon MiFi in the back as backup. He said, once we program it, I don't have to drive, because we just sit back and watch, and it handles how much fertilizer, how much seed, where to seed, how much. And he said, if hackers broke into the tools that run these tractors, they could kill the ag industry for a year. And we would be too late. By the time they figured it out, it would just be too late. So keep going there. You have government, healthcare, information technology, nuclear reactors, materials and waste, transportation, and of course, water and waste systems. So that's the 16 sectors. And again, that ends up encompassing most businesses these days. And so you have to pay attention, understand what this means. Again, report within 72 hours, and report within 24 hours of paying the ransom.
That's quick. That's very quick. I would say within 72 hours, most people are probably still in panic mode. They probably made one call to their insurance company if they have a cyber policy, and they're still trying to figure themselves out.
Yep. So I'm not here right now to just say, stop, like you can't go forward. And you can go ahead and click, because I think people appreciate this, because I get it. It's easy, especially after a few drinks, to want to scare you. And I might go deeper sometimes than others, but it's not about that. It's about putting in the right controls. And what I mean by that, and if you click, makes sense. All the controls in the world mean nothing if your users can easily get around them. This is why zero trust is going to be important. We're just not ready for it yet. And we know that people are always looking for ways around these things. So we just have to, be realistic when we're building out what we call a security program. So
Yeah, our friend,
programs.
Real quick on this one, our friend over Zach at Measured always reminds us of shadow IT. And what do your users, what do your employees, what do the contractors have access to into your network and can do? And shadow IT is the simple concept of, I can download any program on my computer. I can implement and take your business email address and go utilize it to do personal things. All these things start to add into this shadow IT of, I think I'm just giving my employee this endpoint with access to these programs. And all of a sudden you wake up a year from now and that laptop looks nothing like you ever gave it to them, because you don't have these controls in place. And it reminded me of them just zooping around right outside the gate there.
And then we've all been there. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure you're thinking about this holistically, and you want to build a security program that includes people, process, and technology, right? You need all three working together to actually be effective in security. Otherwise, you end up with this gate out there, people are driving around. So let's talk about what I mean by this. And then we talk about people, process, and technology. Let's talk about the outcomes based on what you have. So obviously, if you've got no people, process, or technology, there is no defense, there is no security. If you have just people, you probably have no ability to execute, right? That's just the reality of it. You can't do it. There's too much to be done. But the average business might see close to 1 million security events in their logs every month. You can't look at that with human eyes. That's why you need SIEM to do that. But that's a technology issue. So if you don't have process, you're wasting your effort. If it's technology only, it's what we call shelfware. That gate we just saw, that was technology. And it was pretty much useless. I also laugh back to, I remember when you used to buy computers, and they probably still do, but they came with a Symantec or McAfee antivirus on them. And then I'd be talking to a business, yeah, we've got antivirus, we're good. And then I'd go in, do an audit of their environment. And when I put my mouse over their antivirus that came with the machine, it hadn't been updated to 419 days. That's shelfware to me, means it's no longer effective. Now, if you have people and process, you can't scale. Technology is about helping you scale, do more with less. If I've got people and technology, I'm going to inconsistently deliver operations, meaning I'm going to increase my costs because I don't have a good process to be effective in what I'm delivering. If I've only got process and technology, but no people, there's no adoption. No one's going to follow the rules if there's a process and technology, but people are not on board. So you need all three, people, process, and technology, to drive not only cybersecurity success, but success with any technology rollout, right? Whenever you're doing, you can have buy-in from everybody. And that's why this to me is such an important part of this. What am I thinking about today? What should you be thinking about today? I'm going to call this the 11 things to do tomorrow, right? Where we're not drinking. Whether you're in IT or you're a business leader or you just want to know that your team is doing the right things, here's a quick checklist. It's not perfect, but it's pretty darn close to what you and where you should start. And if you've got technical people, they'll look at this and they'll scoff at a few of these. Oh yeah, you don't need that. Don't worry about that. That's not a problem. Trust me, these are problems. I'm talking to you from experience of our security operations center with 160 people I mentioned. We're ingesting 76 billion events per day right now, looking at alerts and alarms. And these things will help reduce the possibility of a threat actor in Russia coming after your business, or heck, somebody just across town who wants to see if they can break into your network. You just don't know. These are common sense things that your team should be thinking about when it comes to how to secure your environment. And I hate to say this, but Start at the bottom. Okay. Get your assessment done, understand the gaps, review it as executives, then go review your policies, then test your backups and work your way up. You'll be surprised how important those things will be to your business going forward. So, you have any thoughts here?
Yeah, I was thinking back to a law firm that we're Integris is working with right now out on Wall Street in downtown Manhattan. And part of the conversation was calling out the executive team. And it wasn't done in a negative way. It was done in a trusted advisor status of they were shooting from the hip on the people side of IT and cybersecurity, and they were shooting from the hip on the technology side. And then in the middle, they had no processes. So not only did they have no processes, but when I mean shooting from the hip, it was literally a rotation of different IT managers in a short period of time. And then on the other side, technologies, because of that rotation and because of no processes, they're shooting from the hip on technology implementations to get to a certain level of standard. And it had to be defined to them of you all, whether you work with Integris or not, need to define where is the organization today? Where is the law firm today? And that's like, we can put a flag in the ground and now declare that and all agree on it across the organization. And then what's best in class, or what is the standard that I need to get to? And how can I then break that down via business impact? I like to say organizations have budgets of all different sizes. We work with nonprofits that have a $5,000 budget. I've worked with nonprofits that have a $100,000 budget. It doesn't matter the size of the budget. It's what is the impact in these gaps that we now have seen and all agreed on, and which ones can I start with to reduce the risk within my organization the most? Some organizations can attack all of them very quickly. Some have to go quarter by quarter. Some have to go year by year. None of that is the wrong answer. It's defining the stake in the ground, defining where we need to go, and then as the business can handle it, making those improvements. And you'll see a world of difference in your organization if you can do that over the course of time that you need to do it.
Yeah, cybersecurity is a journey, right? There is no one thing, no one magic technology that's going to solve all these issues for us. So working towards these things will be very important. And the question a little bit earlier on from Steve was saying, what questions should we be asking their electronic health record provider? This is actually a really good list, Steve, to help you, frame the questions. So how can you show me that you verify that all software patches and updates have been installed on all of your machines, including firewalls and our network devices? Like, turn these into questions. Tell me what part of your network does not have multi-factor authentication. How often do you change passwords on network devices? Like you ask these as questions into your vendors. You might not like the answers, but at least now, and you can take the positive action to help them go get it fixed and say to them, look, if you want to keep doing business with us, we have a minimum level of care that we expect. And you got to be able to show these to us. And then it's just maturing your operations around security. That's not a problem. It's not a bad thing.
And remember, they're competing for your business. Most of the time, the third-party vendors that you need to engage with are not the only vendors in that industry or can provide that. Sometimes they are, so you're a little bit more pigeonholed, but most of the time they're not. And I will actually flip this conversation because it's a perfect question. You can answer it. You could do third-party vendor risk assessments on the providers. You can see what compliance guidelines they've attested to, like a SOC 2 type 2 or anything in that realm. So you can ask all those questions. And I would also turn it back on yourselves. And sometimes it's not necessarily, maybe if you're a healthcare provider, your consumers may not actually be asking these types of questions. But I like to flip the cybersecurity conversation all the time from a fear-based conversation, which I'm not a fan of actually. And I like to switch it to a revenue-based growth conversation. And we have had some very sophisticated small businesses come to us that compete with larger national consulting companies that the budgets are way out of whack. But what they've decided to do is use the cybersecurity and compliance conversation to their advantage and say, you know what? We're going to double and triple down on how we project and invest in our cybersecurity. And then we're going to lead with that when customers are coming to us to partner with us. We're going to really show them how we've taken this stuff seriously. I think about your financial services companies out there or your manufacturing companies out there. How are you going to show or separate yourself? Because consumers, just like yourself, are also thinking about these things. And I strongly believe that if done, this can be used as a revenue growth generation opportunity for a business and not just how am I going to like, oh, I'm almost talking about this in the sense of going offense versus always being on defense, if that makes sense.
It really does. And for the sake of time, let's jump ahead to the cyber insurance. I think that's probably a hot topic right now. I'm gonna ask a tough question because, yeah, if I recall, you've got an insurance background, right? You were in the industry for a period of time.
That is correct.
And we were talking about the impact of cyber. How do you see insurance companies viewing a cyber attack from a Russian sponsored or a Russian sided group back in the US business? Is that what's going to be?
Yeah, so very interesting. Acts of war on any insurance policy, acts of war are not covered. So what you will actually see is that you will see the US federal government very rarely define something like that. It would have to be a outward, fully known, this was Russia, China, it doesn't matter. What you will see is more what Jay mentioned, which is sponsored or not affiliated with or acting out of their geography, but not directly linked. I'll give you a better example that may resonate a little bit more in this terminology here. So I live on the Jersey Shore. I'm sitting about a mile away from the beach right now. And back in 2012, the Northeast Corridor, at the time I lived in Long Island, but my family was all in New Jersey on the Jersey Shore, got crushed by Hurricane Sandy. And it was Hurricane Sandy until the moment it touched land. And at the moment it touched land, it turned into Superstorm Sandy. And there was a very specific reason why. And most people don't articulate it, but I still was in the insurance business at the time. And the government changed it from hurricane to superstorm when it made landfall so that people could get paid out on their national flood insurance programs. So they could actually get that flood coverage that they were paying for to cover for their houses that they all had lost and things like. So that example is not the most perfect example, but it gives you a reason on why. So yes, cyber war or any acts of war would not be covered by insurance companies. So you'll see them dance that line very, very lightly is the right way to say it in this. Jay, I don't know if you had any follow-ups on that.
No, I think it's going to be a fascinating exercise for everybody to understand what this means. And I don't even know if I know what questions to ask because I know the parts about acts of war, but if it's a group like, to draw blank on names, what are the threat actor groups? And they're not affiliated with the Russians, and they just start launching attacks, and they come out and say it's because of the penalties assigned to Russia because of the conflict. How are they going to solve that? It's going to take time, and it's going to take the government probably to be involved, which I think is why we're really seeing quick moving legislation now to start putting in some rules and guidelines and frameworks so that we can, help protect ourselves. But I'm not here to scare you because that's as fun as it gets. It's a question that's on my mind, though, trying to figure this out because people are asking me every day. And we did this webinar a month ago with Measured. And so why don't you walk through the slide? Because to me, it's a fascinating view on renewals and the impact of cybersecurity on renewals.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the first time, Jay, you're really going to see that all come to fruition is when a cyber insurance carrier denies a claim because of acts of war. And that's when you'll really see that motion come to play. Until that point in time, I believe you're still going to see them pay out on claims and go from there. But eventually somebody will deny a claim because of acts of war. And that's when that whole motion will go forward. So quickly measured our partner on the cyber insurance side, walked us through this example of the firmographic information of a firm that has $18 million in revenue. They're a professional service firm. They're a law office. They have the same number of employees and records retained, meaning same number of records or information that they're holding for $1 million policy. And on the left-hand side, they're saying applicant A has no endpoint protection. They have no cybersecurity awareness training, and they have open RDP ports. So they're wide open, right? They're not really doing anything in terms of cybersecurity. And they're comparing in 21 for applicant A, their policy premium would be $12,000 for that $1 million limit. In 2022, that same applicant is getting declined because of no endpoint protection. They're getting an increase because they're not doing any training, and they're getting declined because they have open ports. And if by the chance they get a policy out there, it's going to look at about $22,000 or $10,000 more, almost double. In a similar instance, applicant B is the opposite case. Applicant B in 21 has everything in place. Their premium's $8,000. So you can see the difference in 21 of applicant B versus A. Obviously, you're saving some money there. And then applicant B in 22 is also actually getting an increase, but it's going to $14,000, and they can actually still get a policy, where applicant A, for the most cases, probably not even going to be able to get a policy. So you can see, I think there was some stuff going on in the chat about cyber insurance and the requirements. And what my knowledge of coming from that industry is that it was a new product for them, and all the carriers were out there writing these policies or bringing them to market. So it was a standard supply and demand curve. Supply was huge, demand was low. Most places you could answer a one-page application or a one-question application and get $1 million policy. That is completely different. In 21 and 22, that cyber insurance marketplace, the supply has dropped, the claims have increased, the demand is higher, and now you're seeing those pricing skyrocket. So the goal here is to start to level that out with putting the proper techniques in place. Just like on your property insurance or your commercial auto or your workers' compensation, there's similar things that you need or have to have in place. And we have records, or the insurance companies have data from hundreds of years of insuring those types of risks. We're getting there with the cyber insurance marketplace.
So we've covered a lot of stuff right now. We've talked about Ukraine, we've talked about insurance, we've talked about building a security program, tied it all together. A question came up from Wendy that I hear all the time, and I'm sure you do too, Anthony, which is she works for a small organization. How does she balance security with productivity?
Absolutely. And you always want to be balancing that. And if your internal IT team or you're outsourcing that, their strategy should be designed around that. Jay, you said it before, and I'm not going to remember the exact words: convenience and security, right? You don't want to give up security for convenience. You do not want to do that, but you do want to make sure that your people are productive. And one of the arguments you could make is that they're going to be extremely unproductive if they can't work for 9 days, and you're going to still incur their salary and benefit cost and all of that. But I truly believe if all of these solutions have become very intuitive, I would say, and Jay, maybe you would correct me here, but I've seen multi-factor, right? It used to be a pain. I used to have to carry around all these different keys and logs and plug stuff in to do an MFA type of thing. Now I literally get a ping on my cell phone or on my Apple Watch that says, "Is that you?" And I just hit a green button. I don't know, Jay, if you want to add anything to that, but to me, it's becoming easier and easier.
And we would talk about the need to sacrifice convenience, right? Why didn't you put your seatbelts on when you get in the car? I mean, when I was a kid, I'm dating myself, but I remember my dad driving around in his Ford LTD station wagon with my siblings with me in the car, the vinyl bench seat in the middle, and he'd roll the car a little bit and we'd just slide across back and forth, right? Today, I wouldn't drive out of the driveway without my seatbelt on. It's not convenient, but it's the right thing to do. And there is that fine line. And as a business owner or a business leader, or Wendy, or in the business you work in, the reality is that you have a responsibility, a care, duty of care. I got the words wrong, but you get the idea. You got a responsibility to protect data. And so do the assessment, go through the assessment process, understand what the risk is, and then see what the recommendations are. It's not usually as onerous as you think. And it's not usually as expensive as you think. It's not as bad as we would like to believe. Like, again, putting a seatbelt on. I don't even think twice about it now. We just do it. I require the kids to do it. I require my grandson now to have it on. I won't get in the car and drive without that. And you got to treat it that way in your business. So I hope that helps answer the question, Wendy.
Absolutely. So we'll get into our final poll here. I know we're right at time. I appreciate you all staying with us, especially after you've been well hydrated. Hopefully those whiskeys were good. It sounded like they were. I'll do a little dig at myself. I did not partake in the whiskey extravaganza because I'm an old man myself, and I've gotten the gout in my right and left foot, which is just insane to me. And I don't wish that on anybody. So I hope you all were able. I was very jealous on my side. And when you get a chance, Michelle, we'll end that poll. We'll share those results on the screen here. Once again, Jay, I appreciate you. You're probably in Tampa. Maybe you're in London today. I don't know where in the world you are, but I appreciate you spending the time with us again.
I'm in Tampa. I actually drove home early just so I could be here for work from the house. So I could at least get a little taste of each of the 5 samples. So I got some left over though. I think 5's my favorite.
I'm excited to head up to Chicago once the scout gets over and go try it out and see it in person.
I should host our next event at Fuse Distillery. All in favor?
I agree. I agree. From everybody at Integris, we want to thank ConnectWise for being a phenomenal partner of Integris's. I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. I hope you enjoyed the whiskey as mentioned. Thanks for being super productive in the chat and engaging with that little snafu we ran into with the webinar license versus the non-webinar license of Zoom. Thank you all and have a good night. We'll be in touch with you all. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, everybody.